Chris, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for inviting me.
So I've been fascinated following you on Instagram for a long while now with just your love of board games, and you just showed me part of your collection. It's an incredible collection. But the reason why I wanted to talk to you today is a little bit about what you've been working on as part of your project to get games into education, which we'll come on to in a little bit. But first up, I just want to talk about your games because, as I just mentioned, there was over 700 you just showed me there. How long have you been playing games for now?
I started really getting into games in about 2015, so that's about 5 years is when I kind of fell down the rabbit hole and got into the hobby.
Sure. Okay. Well, that's probably why you got so many. Then you got a few years on me. I think I was about 2017, and since then, how have you found games have changed your life? Not the thing you do at school. How have you find it's worked with your own social life?
I'm not really sure. I haven't really put a lot of thought into how it's changed my own life, other than like really small anecdotal things. Other than like I found a hobby that I really clicked with, and I never really quite had a hobby that I really clicked with to that same extent. It opened up this very thoughtful. I mean, there's so many aspects about gaming that really match with me well, like the social aspect, the reason to hang around the table with other people, but have something else to focus on, the kind of both the logic and the silliness and the wide variety that you can get. Like I'm all up for a goofy, silly party game or a dexterity game or a big, heavy, meaty Euro or anything in between. Like most games just hit some aspects that really engages me, and I get locked into that. So other than that, I can't really think of a way that it's really impacted my personality and my life.
Other than buying 700 titles and having a room full of games downstairs, I guess.
Yeah. And then and also my love of sharing it. Like I love seeing people who haven't experienced games get into gaming.
Sure. Yeah, likewise. So on Instagram, you're known as the Starting Gamer. What was the inspiration behind the name there? Why did you choose that?
So that's a little bit of a long story, but the short version is I had originally started a business, a local business, where I had bought a couple of foldable shelves, and I would go out to various venues like bars or coffee houses or wineries, and I would host game nights there for them. So I would sort of turn their place into a game cafe for the evening. But they would pay me a fee, and the people who came to play paid for free. So I would get compensated from the venue, and I was doing that for a while, and so I called myself, that business was called the Starting Player because the idea was that we're the starting player token, of course, and play off the idea of a starting player token, but also the idea of I'm trying to bring games to new gamers.
Sure.
Like I'm presenting this opportunity for people to maybe dip their toe in the world of gaming if they never have before. And I did that for a good while up until coronavirus, and then once the lockdown shut down, all that was closed, obviously. So, but that was originally how I got into Instagram, as a way to promote that. And then Instagram ended up like becoming its own thing. Like the promoting side, using social media to promote it, didn't really go very far. There were other ways that were better, but then it just took off as its own thing. I got more into the photography and the creativity of it, and so I just stuck with the Starting Player name. So the business itself is not doing anything at all because of the lockdown, and I don't know if I'll go back to that in the future. So I'm stuck with the name now.
Well, it's a cool name. I was just interested in its origins. So by day, you're an elementary art teacher. What age is elementary? We don't call it that in England. Is that what's that, like 4 to 7 year olds? Is it or?
Yeah, so here that would be 5 to about 12, about 11, 5 to 11 or 12.
5 to 12. So that's your day job, and I know you're passionate about bringing games into the class. Talk a little bit about that. How did that first come about?
Well, my love of gaming, when I have this love of gaming, I just want to share it with everyone, and I want to at least give people. I'm not going to push it because I don't want to be that annoying guy who's like, hey, you got to play this game. But I do want to share and provide the opportunity. So it wasn't that far of a stretch to start gaming at school.
Mm.
So I had started a after school game club at my school that I run about once a week. And these are for kids who sign up, and they sign up and they spend an hour after school, and we play all kinds of games. And then I had started every Friday I had a big planning period and lunch and planning period on Friday. So I just turned that over to games. So I have all kids of almost any grade are welcome to come in. And so I would teach them games there that hopefully some of them could then play after school. And then the more they know games, the more they can share. And overall, the whole thing went very smoothly. And kids were playing a wide variety. Like there's, I would say maybe 8-year-olds who are playing really simple things like Beastie Bar or All Queens Chess. And then the older kids are playing Colt Express and Pandemic. And so over time, sort of the gaming that I was presenting in school just kind of took off and it built momentum. And then at some point, actually last year I started toying with the idea of having a game library in the school. And I talked to the librarian said she didn't want to have another thing on her plate. So I said, fine, I'll run it out of my room. So I set it up in my art storage space. And I put a bunch of rules to make sure it runs smoothly. And I put some expectations. So there's some parameters to it. But kids can come in, almost any kid can come in, borrow a game, sign it out, check it out, bring it back. And it went really very, very smoothly, like surprisingly smoothly. And the kids were doing it. The kids were borrowing games and playing games in their free time. They were bringing them back and they're taking good care of it. And it just went really well. And I have so many games that have educational value. And I just keep thinking about how can I expand this? And it's a little bit funny because early on in my gaming life, we were required to do this after school special, this after school night where we have this test in Virginia called the SOLs, which a lot of people are not a fan of. It's standardized tests, which I'm not a fan of. And we had this big night to prepare for it. And as teachers, we're required to go there. And so I was helping out and doing all these activities. And I'm like, this is like really boring. So I started thinking of ways to gamify it. And I started thinking, I've got some games that you could use in place of this. I've got games that would teach these ideas, that would gauge kids' ideas. You're doing this activity that kids are just kind of walking away from because they're bored, but I've got games that deal with this. So I started thinking about educational games, and I thought there really should be. I looked online for a database of games with educational value, and I found a couple, but I really wanted to do something that was much more in depth. So I said, I'm just going to knock this out. So I started building up a list of games with educational value that any teachers can look up. They can search the tags, they can search for a subject or age or difficulty, and anybody can edit it and add more games to it. I know that was a pretty long-winded answer.
So how many games are on the database now? I'm looking at it now. It's incredibly long.
I don't have it in front of me right now, but I think it was in the 500s.
Wow. And so you've listed all the games by suitable age range, how long it takes to play the game, the difficulty rate, and then I guess most importantly, the tags for educational value about whether it's going to help with maths or communication or logic. It just seems like an incredibly powerful resource that every teacher could make huge use from. What's the plan with it? Is it just to share it with every teacher that has a passion for games and thinks games could be brought into their classroom?
Yeah. So a couple of plans with it. One is to make it a resource that anybody could use, so that any gamer, if they want to add to it, they can say, hey, you totally missed this game, or here's a game that really worked for my class. I mean, you wouldn't think this game would work, but I tried this in my classroom and it worked, and so they could add it to the list. My own personal intention was to create a resource for my own school and to kind of to help build. And later on, I made my own copy of it, so I'm going to go through my copy and mark down which games I own, because I don't own all those games on that list. I'll try to create a resource anyone can use, but from my school, I'm going to mark which ones I own and then say, hey, if you are interested in this as a resource, I've got these and you can use them. And then I'm hoping to just kind of build that more and kind of see where that goes from there. I mean, I would love the idea of being able to build like an actual game library for my school, or maybe for other schools as well, maybe even one for my whole program. I don't know right now, but that's sort of, if I'm thinking big picture, that's what the list. I would like the list to be used. I would like the list to be used.
Amazing. So are there other teachers in your school or district that support this? What sort of reaction are you getting from your colleagues?
It's really interesting because I have a colleague in my school who she is sort of working with the gifted and talented program, and also she also works with all the classes in the school, so it's not just the gifted and talented students. And she's been trying to get really simple board games in, like strategy games, really simple strategy games into the classrooms. But she only has like five, and she wants, like, if everyone knows these five games, and it just hasn't taken off. And I think it's mostly because it comes across as a top-down approach where she's saying these are the games you should play. And I think what I've built so far, where the kids are right now, I mean, not now because we haven't been in school since March because of the lockdown. But before that, when we were in school, kids were actively borrowing games, and teachers were noticing. Teachers were picking up on this, and I was starting to become like, hey, oh, he's that board game guy. But I thought that would be a good starting point when teachers are seeing kids playing games. Then if I have this resource, teachers can say, yeah, actually, I saw kids playing games in my room, and I can see that could be useful. I can use that. There is one colleague that I have who does a project. She's a sixth grade, so that would be about 12 years old. She has just, when they learn about the solar system, she asked them to design a board game to make basically an educational board game about the solar system. So she's asked me for a couple of years now to come in and teach games and teach really, really basic game design.
So what about the principal? Are they supportive of this project?
Yeah, I think overall my principal has been very supportive, and she's just, in general, she's a very supportive person. Also, I should say that the way our particular school works is when we release students, we have this cafeteria. A lot of students will go to the cafeteria to wait for the buses, and that can become a loud, disruptive place. And one of my other colleagues has said, you know what, we should put some things, kids are going to get bored here. We should put in some simple games and keep them busy, like Connect Four. And she was talking to me about it. I was like, hey, you know what, I'd be happy to head that up. I'd be happy to take control of that. So I brought in some games that work well in that, like games that are engaging but very easy to play and very, very quick to put away, like super quick to put away. And that's gone on really, really well. And so the principals noticed that. And so I think she's overall, when I approached her with the idea of the board game library out of my room, she was very supportive of that.
Amazing. So what sort of games did you put into the cafeteria to help with that? What are those quick play, quick learn, quick put away games you've chosen?
Oh, off the top of my head, I have to look at them right now, but things like Illusion was really quick. Illusion, you can put away in 15 seconds, or The Mind, and that. I don't know if you've heard of Taco Cat Goat Cheese Pizza, but kids love that game.
Yeah.
That's easy to put out, easy to play, easy to put away. Onitama was really popular. Love Letter was popular.
Amazing. How are the kids reacting to this? Are they thinking, oh wow, Mr. Johnson's the geeky teacher with his games again, or are they thinking Mr. Johnson's the cool guy with the games? What's the reaction? What sort of kids are we talking about here?
I'd say there's a variety. There's all of that, but I think for the most part, it's been well accepted. Like when I have my lunch, my Friday's lunch at the busiest, like my entire room is packed with kids of all from grades 3 to 6, which is about 9. It's about from ages 9 to 12. Like my whole room is packed, and I think for the most part, the kids think it's pretty. And of course, there's kids that are like, oh yeah, got it, all right, yeah, fine.
And what about the parents? Are they thinking this is good? It's bringing some structure to these otherwise unstructured times of the day, or are they questioning why are there games in my kids' schools?
It's because the way that I have it doesn't interact with my teaching at all, really. So most parents aren't necessarily that aware of it because art is art, and we don't really do games in art time. So most parents know me through the art program. The parents who do know me from the games are more likely to be the ones who are in the after-school club. And so they're more likely to be supportive in general. So those parents are incredibly supportive. I've had a couple of parents occasionally who've asked to volunteer. I was like, absolutely, I'll take some volunteer help. But I've had a couple of parents who will hang out after school and play games with the kids. Oh, the other thing that I did, I mentioned that that night when we had the SOL night to prepare for the tests. And then we got a new principal, and I had approached her and I said, you know what, instead of having SOL night, could we just do board game night? So once a year, I'm in charge of board game night. So a lot of the parents have seen me in that context as far as board games. They've seen me interact with games in a very friendly way. So I think for the most part, yeah, pretty good. I've had a couple of students who come to lunch, and I said, how come you come to lunch and you're really into these games, you love these games, but you never come to the after school club? What's up? And they said, oh, my parents said that's a waste of time. That's just dumb. They said, what's the point of spending an hour after playing Monopoly after school? We can play Monopoly in the house. And of course, they know the difference. But like, I try to tell them, we're not playing Monopoly. We're playing like strange things you've never heard of before. But my mom says, no, it's a waste of time. But I would say for the most part, the parents are aware of it, have been very supportive.
I find it hard to see sometimes when I speak to teachers such as yourselves, when they don't get as such a positive response from their colleagues and bosses and students and parents as you have. It's wonderful that yours has been so positive. But some of the other teachers who I've spoken to who've tried to do a similar thing but haven't received such positive feedback, I think is largely because of what you're talking about there, where parents or whoever it is maybe don't understand what it is you're trying to do. But it feels to me like games have got so much to offer in an educational purpose with all the things that you're so clearly aware of. What would you say now if a teacher was watching this and thought, I want to bring games into my classroom, I want to bring games into my school, but I haven't done it before, I don't know if I'll get any support, I don't know how everyone else will feel. What sort of advice would you give them to encourage them to give it a try?
One thing that made a difference was hosting the yearly game nights, and that you can imagine that is a lot of work. It is a ton of work to do that. But I was able to, I scrounged around. I was able to get some teachers on board for that. I was able to get some parents of the parents of the kids who are at my after school club who are glad to help out. And I can get them to help me out. So it did take a lot of organizing. But I think it's a fantastic resource just to be visible. Like if parents can come and experience games, even really simple games, like trying to think of an example. If you have, I mentioned Illusion. And if you have Illusion and a parent is seeing a kid play Illusion and say, oh, this is pretty fun and this is really simple. And oh, wait, we're learning about percent. This whole time we've been learning about percentages. And that makes percentages really obvious. It's a very visual way. Oh, yeah. I mean, if they can see the value of the game there in front of them, I think that can make a huge difference by hosting game night.
Absolutely. Do you find, other than the sort of core educational side of it, there's a massive benefit from the social skills that these kids are learning as they play the games, from their communication and their
yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that to me seems like a massive thing and a huge benefit for all parts of education and all parts of life. Do you think that's an important part of why you brought games into your school?
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That's not necessarily I emphasized as much in the list. I did put it in the list. I put tags like such as communication, teamwork, and cooperation, because those are important things that teachers are going to look for. Most teachers, if they're looking for a game in the classroom, they're probably not necessarily looking for games that promote social skills, although there are some games that's their focus, which would work well for a counselor. But I think almost every game on the list is gonna promote social skills. An anecdote that I have is that, so when I have my lunchtime games, as I said, it's open to everyone, and that means non-gaming kids who have never seen games like this before. And I tend to every once in a while have like a new group of kids who will come in at lunch. They're curious about it. And if a group of kids comes in, let's say a bunch of friends come in and they've never played games before at all, they're almost always, I don't know why, but for whatever reason, they almost always go with One Night Ultimate Werewolf first. That's like the gateway game in my room. I don't know if it's built up a reputation, I don't know. And I'll notice there's a very distinct pattern when people start playing One Night Ultimate Werewolf, and that the first time they play, they'll be really boisterous, they'll be loud, they'll be angry. When it's time to vote, they'll just kind of yell things like, I heard a noise and it was you. You look like a werewolf. You look suspicious. And it's just kind of like they don't know what to do, but they're having fun. And they play this over and over and over. And each time they're playing it, they're getting a little bit better. And they're figuring out the subtleties of it. And by the time, let's say a couple weeks they've been playing for a couple of weeks. After a couple weeks, they really have built up their communication skills. Like they're so used to communicating in this very sort of angry finger pointing way. And after a couple of weeks, they're like, you know what? Let me think about this a little bit deeper. And I really have seen a change happen in the way kids are communicating with each other.
That's amazing. So you're saying playing One Night Ultimate Werewolf has increased the debating and listening skills and communication skills of your students. I mean, I could definitely think of 2 Americans right now that could perhaps benefit from playing One Night Ultimate Werewolf.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I hope you didn't see that yesterday.
Oh, I sure did. And
I'll be honest. I don't know. I don't know if you want to cut this or not, but I was embarrassed to be an American yesterday.
No, don't. I mean, it's not you. It's 2 human beings. I get it. But the point I think that we're trying to make here is that perhaps with things like games, I'm not saying games are the answer to everything, but perhaps with things like games being brought into the classroom, you're going to have kids go through their education process with things other than just a square box of the curriculum saying you need to learn your math, you need to learn your English, you need to learn your science. It adds that extra element of social skills, communication skills, understanding, problem solving, and all these other things. And like you said quite rightly earlier, making all those other core things a bit more fun and engaging. Not everybody learns well from a textbook. Not everyone learns well from having to revise and remember things and tests. It just brings a different element to education, and that's why I'm so keen to talk with more teachers like you and to try and share stories like yours to other teachers to give them the confidence and the courage to do that and bring games out into the classroom.
In that sense, games is a lot more like real life, in the sense that, as an adult, I use math frequently when I have to, but I never sit down and do a math worksheet. It's always in context of something. It's always in a real life context. And that's one of the things I teach my kids, is that math is never just math. You never do math for its own sake. It's always in the context. Numbers are never just numbers. They always represent the thing. So if kids are playing a game in which they have to use math to develop their strategy, but they're also speaking, they're also communicating, and they're also developing a strategy, and they're also planning their next 3 steps. You're taking math out of a textbook. Kids are still practicing it in a way that they really enjoy, but you're putting it in a context that's a lot more like real life.
For sure. It's just such a obvious thing to me, but only because I'm somebody who plays lots of games. So I just feel like the more people that hear these sorts of stories from people like you who've done that so successfully, the more likely it is that more kids will get the benefit of having awesome teachers like you bringing such variety into their education. Chris, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I hope you can get back to school soon and safely play games with your kids again soon. I really appreciate your time.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure.